It's been a long week, and all you can think about is the felt. Before you hit the tables, catch up on the biggest poker stories from this week on The River with Fox and Amanda.
Hey there, and welcome to episode 1 of The River with Fox and Amanda. Welcome to your show, Amanda.
Thank you. Welcome right back at you.
So we're going to cover some interesting news stories of the week in the poker world every week. Put this thing out Friday or Saturday. And just talk a little bit about what happened, a little deeper dive into a few things, maybe some opinions. I have a lot of opinions. I feel like you do too.
Yes, indeed.
So let's start with a news story that involved us. In fact, a couple other reporters contacted me about it to talk to me about it, and you as well. You tweeted a picture of the trophy that the Women's Poker Association sent to our event in Reno at the Atlantis, and got quite a response.
Yes, specifically that this trophy, which was for the ladies' event, looked like, gosh, how do I be PC about this? Looked like, women's features.
I didn't see it at first. It looks like a flame to me. The first person that really caught my attention with it was Daniel Negreanu, and I was really surprised to see him tweet what he did, given that it's a little bit controversial and might kind of catch some flack, and Daniel's, a guy who has a lot of money in endorsement deals. I was very disappointed in so much of the poker community in the crass jokes that were funny in the 70s maybe. But the ladies all took it in stride, and in fact, because it became sort of a controversial trophy, the ladies in the event really then wanted to win it. I mean, who doesn't want to win a trophy that's gone viral, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, so just to clarify for the audience, so you helped host the event, right?
Right, we made it part of our Ninja Poker series. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that's interesting that the people there, they were aware, which is good because that shows that poker Twitter is kind of a community, that there, the awareness spreads to there. Yeah, and there was a three-way chop, right?
Right. I was really worried that the winner would then be ashamed of their trophy. Although we had another trophy for all of our events. We had the shuriken stuck in a piece of wood, big silver trophy that Atlantis makes for us. Those are very cool. But the WPA sent this extra trophy, just as they did with the World Series ladies event winner. And I was worried that whoever won it just wouldn't be proud of this beautiful trophy because it's really nice. And instead, the women all wanted to win it. And when they did the three-way chop, my wife, Jordan Andrich, Heidi Sjogren, and Molly Mossy, who's our Pink Ninja representative of our tour, chopped it 3 ways, and Molly really wanted the trophy, so they let her have it. And she told Danielle Anderson before the start of the trophy in one of her tweets, or before the start of the tournament, that now she really wanted to win this trophy. She was going to win this thing, so she wanted it, and she made it happen.
Persistence. Amazing. Well, I don't want to talk too much in the weeds about, 13-year-old humor going over the trophy, but I think what is interesting is talking about the importance of trophies in general, because I think it really, really, really matters. I grew up in a household where we had poker books all over the bookshelves, and my father and I, flash forward a few years later, we actually played the tag team together at the WSOP tag team event. We final tabled it. We took 3rd place. That's how you and I met. And I think that was a product of, because we had a family poker table, because we had poker books displayed, because he was always watching poker on television, poker was very wholesome. And even for me as a woman, it just felt very mainstream, very welcoming. It wasn't any of that shady card rooms with cigars type vibe. And so I think that, people always ask, how do we get more people into poker, especially more women? And I think a lot of it involves changing the ambiance, the environment, the branding, right, of poker, the look and feel. And I
Yeah.
think if we have a trophy, and if that's something that you point to when you go to someone's house and you're like, oh, what's that from? Well, I won a poker tournament. All of a sudden, winning a poker tournament is not something to be ashamed of. I actually, I remember I was like in second grade, second or third grade, and my dad used to play poker with this guy at the Hollywood Park Casino, not at a home game, at a casino, and this guy is the father of one of the girls in my class. And my dad comes up to him at like an open house where all the parents meet all the teachers and says, "Hey, it's good to see you here." And the guy's like, "Shh, don't my family does not know that I play poker." It is like, even though it was at a casino, even though, it's totally legal, he's like, don't tell anyone. My family doesn't know I play poker. So then my dad, was really quiet. And we need to change that. And I absolutely love that the Commerce Casino recently announced that they're going to start giving out poker tournament trophies for even daily tournaments. And I think that's really
That is great.
cool. And I think, yeah, isn't that great? And they're actually having someone design it, like a custom Commerce, casino daily trophy. So cool. And if you just have whoever goes and wins a daily casino tournament and they can have that trophy in their house, I think that's a big, big step towards bringing poker out in the open.
It means a lot to people. To me personally, trophies have never been a big deal. Winning the bracelet was a big deal just because it's a thing forever that you've done. But they're cool, and a lot of players find them very, they're really important. Our trophy for our Eye Ninjas events for the main event is a hand forged katana from Japan with our logo on the blade, and we have to bring it in a protective locked case because the casino security loses their minds if it's going to be displayed anywhere because it's actually sharp. My wife cut her finger on it the instant that it arrived the first time. And the winner of the last time we were in Reno brought his sword from last time to day 2 in case he won again, so we could get pictures with both swords.
The both of them?
Yeah, yeah. People, this stuff is important to people. Those win trophies, I've seen people find a way to get those win trophies home that are like they're these big. If you haven't seen one, they're these big, heavy stone things that are the win building, right? And
Yeah.
and people love them. And I don't know what they weigh, but they're heavy, and people have couriered them home to themselves or driven home to keep their trophy because they're so hard to deal with in luggage. But they want them anyway, and so they're like these coveted things. That's definitely very cool that they're adding trophies to the dailies at the big casinos, and it's starting to happen more places.
Yeah, so no, I hope more casinos follow suit. And I think having a trophy culture around poker would actually produce more benefits than people would even think.
Yeah,
I
no,
think it'd
I
pay
mean
for
that's
itself.
yeah. Most people say they play for the money, but most people don't make any money doing it, and that's not really why they play. And I got myself a trophy this week. Uh, I won a CSOP event at the iNinja series as well. The only ones I play, I don't think it's great for a tour owner to be playing their own events. It depends on the situation. I'm not criticizing other people necessarily, but I've seen it happen where players don't like it much when a tour owner wins, and especially because I'm a pro, probably not a good idea. So I just don't play my own events. But the one I always do play is the CSOP. I play it whether it's part of our events or whether it's somewhere else. I always I volunteer to help them as much as possible. The charity series of poker, they're great, and I've never run deep in one. It's just never worked out for me. But this time I finally won one, and that's cool that it was the one at the event we hosted. So I finally got myself that CSOP trophy as well.
Congratulations. All this trophy talk, it has me thinking about, I don't know if you've seen GG Poker, the big website. So some of the players have these special avatars, and they're from the Chinese Zodiac series. So they're like a horse or a monkey or a snake, right? Or a tiger. So they're animals from the Chinese Zodiac. And the only way you can achieve these avatars is by winning first place in like the horse tournament, right? Or the pig tournament or whatever. And when I was playing on GG Poker when I was in Mexico, oh my gosh, I wanted one so bad. And they were they're actually really cute. the design style, like the snake one, is actually adorable. Like these are like really, really cute avatars, and I just think that, not to be stereotypical, but in terms of making poker more appealing for women and friendly, like when you do things like that, when you have an aesthetic and when you have a goal to win, like, the cute trophy horsey or the monkey, even if it's digital, makes a big difference. It's really motivating.
Absolutely, that's a cool idea. I almost flew across the country or across the planet back in the online poker days when money was free and I was young enough to treat it like that. I saw an advertisement in a magazine for a poker tournament happening in Vietnam that awarded the title Asian Poker Cobra. And I was like, I must be the Asian Poker Cobra. I have to have this.
Poker Cobra.
It came with a championship belt, and I was like, yes, I must have this. And it was a $120 buy-in tournament, and I was looking at flights, like to try to figure out if I could get to Vietnam and play this thing, and was there a way I could do this, but it didn't end up happening. Just that idea that you get a title and you get a belt and the cool things that you get makes a big difference.
We should do more belts. I remember there's this ultra marathon. It's not quite poker, but it's an ultra marathon. It's called the Badwater Creek Ultra Marathon. It's in Death Valley in California, which is the lowest point.
Sounds
and
horrible.
it starts, oh yeah, and it gets better. It starts in July, right? Hottest place. And it starts from the lowest point and it ends like in one of the mountains at the highest point. Like in that desert, right? And it's an ultra marathon, so I think it's 75 miles, give or take, something like that. Takes a couple days. When you run it, you have like kind of a crew driving by you, right, in the dead of summer. But if you complete the ultra marathon in time, you get a belt buckle. You get the Badwater Creek belt buckle. And that's pretty darn cool. And I remember my grandfather, he actually knew someone in his law firm. He had the belt buckle.
Wow.
So yeah, right. So imagine if we have that kind of prestige. It's not the same as running 75 miles and 110 degrees, but if we have that same prestige, or, outside of just bracelets, because I do think that the bracelets can look a little bit gaudy. They look a little bit. They remind me of the wrestling stuff.
Yeah. I think if you run 75 miles in the middle of summer in Death Valley, you should get a belt buckle and then your head examined. That's incredible.
Yes.
So our next story, an interesting story that popped up this week. This guy Rampage, Espen Yau. I had heard, seen him on Twitter, heard about him, didn't know anything about him. I just knew there was this guy. And then this story came up this week that he was kind of questioning the integrity of ACR's random number generator, or just saying in general that it's kind of rigged. And we wrote an article about it on Cards Chat. I think Bob Patrick wrote that one. And I went and learned about who this guy is, and he's pretty interesting. Not who I thought this was going to be.
How so?
He's a young Asian kid who's like a super slick production YouTube and vlogger. He seems to be, at least as far as I can tell in the brief investigation I've done, looks like a good poker player to me. I mean, I think this guy's making money. And his streams are fantastic. Like I watched a couple of them just to prepare for this and see what it was all about, and was very impressed with just what a great job of production he's doing. And he's he's not 25 yet. I think he's still quite young.
We're very close in age, because I remember we both started playing poker at the same time. I started playing poker when I was 23, 29 now. So I believe he was 21. So I think that would make him like 27 now, which I think seems about right.
Okay.
Something ballpark like that.
And he seemed to think that maybe the random number generator at ACR wasn't legit, and that had created a lot of people talking about it then on Twitter.
Yeah, because I believe he has on SharkScope. So I don't think he has a poker tracker recorded, but on SharkScope, it's very clear he's played over 700 tournaments, something like that, and lost 100 buy-ins. About 100. So he's not doing well. I think he's down 60 or 70K on there. Sorry, excuse me, I missed the numbers. I think he's played more than, I know he's lost around 70K. He's either played 700 or like 1,000 or 1,700 tournaments, like a very, very large sample size of tournaments, and a net loser, like a just straight downward spiral. And when you look at, he says on WSOP Online, which is not as tough as the site as the ACR, and we can discuss that and the reasons why, and live, which, more variant, smaller sample size, but he's a winner. So he's not able to beat ACR is basically what he's saying.
And, in big fields, that variance can be massive. If he's playing big field tournaments, it's possible he's a winner and he's still down. The variance is just so big. And, he's got almost 400K in live earnings. He's beating other sites.
Multiple rings.
Yeah, looks like he can play. There are a couple of potential reasons for this other than the variance, and one of them is that, as you said, the games on ACR probably are tougher. There are more accusations of things like multi-accounting and real-time assistance on ACR than there are on WSOP.com. And I work with a lot of students on ACR. I don't play there myself, but I do work with a lot of students who play there, and I see how the tournaments are, and then I play frequently on WSOP.com's Nevada site myself, and there's a real difference. They've got bigger fields, bigger prize pools, way more tournaments to play on ACR. It's a much bigger site. But on WSOP, the games are definitely softer.
Well, something that I think is interesting is, so, in ACR, they have very, very, very long late reg. That's how they get such big prize pools. Like, it'll be 5 hours of registration plus breaks. So you're nearing 6 hours of registration. And I recently saw a study, like a very, very intense analysis of late regging. Actually, it was brought to me by my poker coach, John Bradley. He's fantastic. He has over $1 million in recorded online winnings. And in this study, they said there's a huge disadvantage to registering on time and a very big advantage to late registering. So the value of your chips becomes a lot higher. Now, I don't know if that really matters as much or if that holds true in a tournament where there's 2 hours of registration. But if you're playing tournaments with 5 hours of reg, 6 hours of reg, and you're registering right at the beginning, it might be harder to beat.
That's very interesting. I have heard people say that late reg is better, and I never understood why. I'm curious about that study. You should send me that, because I'm very curious.
I'll send it to you, and if we start getting some followers, we can bring it back up. We can do a follow-up next week, and we'll have Chris's analysis.
I would be curious if they considered late regging versus regging at the start and just only those two options, or whether they considered, like, is it better to reg at the start and be willing to late reg as well, because it's hard for me to imagine, like in live tournaments, I never considered that late reg might be better, because I want to play with all those bad players who are going to go broke in the first couple hours. So like in a live tournament where the field is soft, I wouldn't even consider that late reg would be better. But I have heard people talk about it, and certainly it worked for Phil Hellmuth, in 2021.
Yeah, exactly.
He was registering everything and just crushing it.
When I was speaking with John Bradley, he was saying it's worth it to late reg, he thinks, at least based on the study, except GG Poker, and this is the only website I believe that does this, if you register early before the tournament starts and you bubble the tournament, you get your buy-in back. So
that's nice.
The bubble protection, which is a clever idea, the bubble protection might cancel out the late registration benefits. And, it's, there's different things, but I just wonder, when you're playing on a website like ACR in particular, so one is the website rigged and the algorithm and all those things. 2, the player pool's more difficult. There's all the accusations of bots and We know that it's an international player pool where people have a lot more experience, and and possibly multi-accounting, all these different things going on. And three, the structures are very different than pretty much any other website. So when you're dealing with bigger fields, bigger registration periods, that's going to be harder to beat.
It will. So the first allegation that things like that the random number generator is rigged, or that there's some other sort of problem with the fairness of the site, I don't think that's legit. In doing some work for Cards Chat, where I investigated a bunch of cheating allegations on websites, I bought many millions of hands and ran them into Poker Tracker, ran them through different analyses, and at least in any of the games where you can buy hands in the cash games and in the tournaments, things are running the way they should be in terms of the random number generator. You can look at things like, how often do people get aces? How often do I get aces? How often does this guy get aces? How often do those aces hold up when they get all in pre-flop? How often? You can look at all of those things and break all those things down and see that that's just not the problem. Whether there's, that wouldn't have picked up a super user scandal, but the super user scandal would have turned up in the analyses I did. That was one of the things people were concerned about. Something's shady at ACR. I ran a bunch of analyses and I didn't see anything. What I did see were some groups of people, groupings, and what I did was a plot graph. I ended up with some odd groups of people that I think are probably playing too close to each other and are winning players, which means they're sharing information, they're using the same RTAs, they're doing something that's probably against the terms and conditions of the site. And I don't think that...
Do you find this more common at certain buy-in levels than others?
Yes. I found a lot of it in the 6-max cash games at 1-2. That was a big spot for it. I think in the higher games, you've got to be real good and playing very solver correct if you're not already a good player. Whereas in like 51 or 1-2, if you get you go on a pre-solved database, there's a bunch of them, and you find one that you can use in real time. You can play in those games and win in those games, and people probably are either using a real-time assistance or they have a second laptop right there that they're looking things up on, and they're all playing from the same database. Someone has probably, my guess, created something that's a very efficient way to get through these pre-solved databases.
Yeah.
And see, like, okay, I have queens and it's on the turn and it's king 4-3-3. What do I do? And to get through that very quickly without using up your time bank. That's probably, one person has probably created that thing, and then some people are using it. We're banning people from ACR for doing this kind of thing. They have a website where you can see all the screen names that were banned, but I don't think anybody's been banned in like a year and a half or something. At least not added to this.
While.
Yeah, they haven't been added to this thing, and that's bothering some people as well. And it's hard. You have to try to get a website to ban someone who plays a ton of rake, right? Especially cash games. These people are paying a lot of rake, and if you ban enough people, you lose your critical mass, and some of your games don't run, and that can, your whole site falls apart. So getting a business to act against their own interest is tough.
Absolutely. Did you find these trouble spots, let's just say, in tournaments as well, or did you only analyze cash games?
I didn't do as much analysis in tournaments. What I did do was find some players who, other pros that I know who play frequently on ACR, told me, this guy and this guy and this guy, look at them, they're RTA for sure. And I looked at them, and their choices were solver correct an awful lot. I didn't get enough information to be able to prove that someone is using an RTA. I don't want to deal with the lawsuit of accusing someone of that if I can't really prove it. But it looks right to me. And pros that play on ACR that are friends of mine tell me They think that in the higher buy-ins that it might even be in the majority of people. There's a lot of people using RTAs and solver databases on the site. That's probably true a lot of places. And in fact, I know that ACR was kind of a leader in some of the things they did to prevent that a few years ago.
Yep.
You know, they did I don't know if they pioneered it, but the first place I heard of doing it, they scrambled the pixels on the pot size, and it was too fast for human eyes to pick up, but your computer that's screen scraping it, that's then giving you advice and real-time assistance, the only way to do that was screen scraping, and it would screw up the screen scrape, and the solver would think that the pot was a different size and give you terrible advice. Not only is that good for preventing RTAs by itself, but then they compared when your table was getting this treatment to when it wasn't. And if your decisions were really bad when it was getting the pot manipulated and really good when it wasn't, they knew you were using an RTA and they would ban you. And so that's how they banned many of those names initially.
It's very
so
clever.
I know that ACR has put some work into doing this and to stopping it, but I don't know what they've done the past year and a half. It seems like nobody knows, and that's causing a lot of questions like Rampages to come up. But in terms of the random number generator, I don't see that that's a problem, but there may be a problem that they're just not catching enough collusion and enough cheating and enough multi-accounting and RTAing, and that makes the games much harder.
Well, even though these players pay a lot of rake, and short term, obviously that's the greatest benefit if they eat up the ecosystem. If all the sharks eat all the fish, then long term that's worse for the viability. I know that heads up used to be a lot more common online, and now it's not nearly as common. And my husband, who cut his teeth playing heads up online, his theory on it is people go broke quicker. If you're a less skilled player, you're gonna get out of that ecosystem, versus if you're playing six max or full ring, you're gonna stay in the poker environment longer, because every dog has its day. So
I've done some consulting with poker sites, online poker sites, about this idea. Helped them educate some of their whales to not lose so fast. Helped them set policies to prevent these things. And if that ecosystem gets even slightly broken, it's a spiral. If you have 2 sharks and 8 fish, and you replace the fish 2 a day, and the sharks eat 1 a day each, you've got this balance. And if an extra shark shows up 3 days later, you have no fish left. It's a problem.
Yeah.
So
love this.
So with heads up play, you have 2 problems. Not only do people go broke quickly, especially in cash games, right? I played heads up sit and goes for a living years ago. In heads up cash games, people just get ruined. And then it's very easy to RTA in heads up games. You can have a whole database laid out on your computer and just run it that way. It's very easy to do. And the good players that are good at heads up, it's not nearly as much work to get really, really good at heads up play as it is at full ring play or six max play. You could put in a year of real study and be a really quality heads up player and be crushing these recreational players that go feel like playing some heads up. So that's definitely an area where it causes problems. Does your husband still play online?
Online, he plays in like the Poker 2 games, and he plays in the app games like that. He doesn't really play that much online. He'll play sometimes online tournaments, but does not play on ACR. He switched to being a live player. But back in the day, he was playing pretty high stakes. Pre-Black Friday.
As a quick note of advice to our listeners, in the investigation that I did, I spent a lot of time looking into private app games, and I have screenshots of RTAs that run on your phone in these private app games. I have tons of information from players who played in these games about collusion and RTAs happening in the games. And if you are playing in a private invite-only game that's 10, 20, no limit or bigger, you're being cheated for sure. I couldn't find one where it wasn't happening. That doesn't mean there isn't one. If you're running one that's straight, good for you. But if you're running one that's straight, I assure you, you're in a small minority. I found information on a game where two players were colluding and they were world-class players. There were two names that were whales, these guys from California who are very wealthy and are known to play in these games, except that neither of those people were actually playing in those accounts. It was two more world-class players who were both sharing cards with each other. And then two people who were using RTAs. And then one guy who was one of the best no-limit players in the world, who was a loser in the game because all these other people weren't what he thought they were. As you got 6 of the 7 people in the game cheating. And this is just not uncommon. These big invite-only app games, like there's just almost no security in those games, and they're almost none of them are straight. They're very shady.
Well, he plays. My husband plays in a very small game. This is like.
Oh yeah, those are.
Thing. Yeah. Yeah. It's a big deal. Poker gets, and there's obviously it's not as clear what's cheating and what's not when it comes to. We glamorize study in the poker world because it takes study from a game of luck to a game of skill. So we say if you can memorize, like I did, a pre-flop chart and ranges, then you're elevating the craft of poker because you're proving that there's a method to the madness, right? You're saying that it's a skill game. And you're learning the odds, and all those things are great. But then it doesn't take too long, slippery slope, until people get from looking at a pre-flop chart to then having a computer automate that for you, to then having a computer automate your decisions.
Yeah, and there is some
or direct your decisions.
Almost gray area there. I mean, it's pretty clear in the site's terms and conditions. If you look at any site, what they allow and don't allow. But I sold laminated pre-flop push-fold charts, like 10 big blinds and below chart, like years ago. Like having one of those next to your computer is illegal, is against the terms and conditions of all the major sites. And having them at the poker table and looking at them during a hand is actually a felony in Nevada. Like, and that doesn't necessarily feel like you're doing a terrible thing,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think probably why it doesn't feel like a terrible thing is that's something that us as humans are capable of internalizing and then reproducing. You can memorize, for the most part, your push-shove ranges, your shove-fold ranges. That's not impossible. But obviously the sophistication and nuance of playing poker on multiple streets when you're dealing with varying stack sizes and varying bet sizes, that's when computers really come into play.
That's right. And I even like just having a very simplified push-fold chart really does the trick. And this is just such a good opportunity that I can't help myself. I wrote a book called Short Stack Ninja, which covers 20 big blinds or less in tournaments, and have all the Nash charts in the back. And I put the Nash charts in the back and told people, by the way, don't memorize these. Because what you really need is just the simple push-fold formula, and then just kind of learn how to modify it. So I gave people this. Should have had this ready because I knew we were talking about this, and it just didn't occur to me how valuable this would be. But a very simplified push-fold range, and I covered 4 big blinds with 4 players left to act, and then either 8 and 4 or 4 and 8, and then 8 big blinds with 8 players left to act, and gave them 3 ranges. And if you memorize those 3 ranges, you're just really close all the time. And I've done like training stuff with Learn WPT where we did that same thing and presented it on the screen. If you just memorize like some stuff that's close and then learn how to adjust it and when to adjust it, you're really there. Playing correctly with 5 to 10 big blinds isn't a hard thing to learn to do.
Well, that being said, when you play in a live environment, then we get back to old school poker. When you're in a close decision, a lot of times it comes to you look them in the eye, and what was it? I think it was Doyle Brunson who said, show me your eyes and you show me your cards. So, something like something like
Yeah.
that, right? And so, if you can tell that the person next to you is really excited about their hand, or you can tell that they're very disinterested, then people like that. People respect that, and people glamorize that you're able to pick up on a read.
And as the last thing in this kind of ACR story, I talked to Scott Ball last week when we were talking to him about the $1 million bounty that he won on GG. And the person who called it to tell him he'd won $1 million bounty because he didn't realize it was Phil Nagy from ACR.
Yeah.
Nagy has caught a lot of flack for some things he has done. Some of it certainly deserved, some kind of unacceptable behavior in public. And he's a very controversial figure, and either you're against him or you're with him. Scott says that Nagy is a misunderstood guy and that he's a really good guy, and that everything is straight on the site. He certainly has his supporters, and ACR is still paying people. I don't play on the site. I wouldn't keep a lot of money on the site, which is what I always advise my students. Hard to know if the DOJ could shut them down tomorrow and take their money. That's what happened with Full Tilt and PokerStars. The DOJ took all their money and shut them down. So you kind of play on the site at your own risk. Yeah. And you have a story about live streams.
Yeah, so I think we would be remiss to not mention that Hustler Casino Live last weekend had their longest live stream ever. They are making waves. I think it was around 15 hours, give or take, of super high stakes poker. Multiple players had over $1 million in front of them on the table. And what is interesting is not only, it feels like Hustler Casino Live has arrived. Right? It feels like they are real, they're getting the biggest players, the highest stakes, and they're getting the eyeballs. But I felt like this was one of the first times where Live at the Bike had a competitive stream as well. And Phil Hellmuth has been playing last week, and I remember seeing tweets of people saying they don't know which one to watch. They're like multi-tabling the different streams. And I think that's great if we can have a little bit of healthy competition. Between the Hustler and Live at the Bike, because obviously that makes both better.
Yeah, competition is a good thing when you're a customer.
Yeah.
And so you did most of the research for this week's episode and sent me the list of things that we can talk about, and then I kind of went and learned about each of them. And in learning about this, the live streams, I don't watch these things much. Watching poker on TV is just hard for me. But I went and watched a little bit of Hustler and a little bit of Live at the Bike, and something that I noticed as a sound guy, I'm a little bit of an audiophile. I made the intro and outro music for the show. Was that the sound is better on Hustler, and that maybe that's why they've done well, because people like me, I don't want to watch Live at the Bike anymore.
Yes,
after watching a couple of them. There are sudden jumps in volume that are startling that I hate, and there's 5 or 10% of the population that feels the same way I do about startling loud noises, and just I don't want to deal with that. And they're not big, they're not terrible. Most people won't notice them. People like me though notice them and go, I don't want to watch this. And the sound production is just better at Hustler, and that might be something Live at the Bike is not paying attention to. It's the only big difference I noticed. The production is very good on both. They look good. They bring in famous players in big pots, and controversy is also a big thing. And Hustler seems to have done that really well lately. Controversy brings in the eyes, right?
Absolutely. Well, it's funny you say that with the sound quality, because there's so many videos now how to be a YouTuber and get 1 million subscribers and make all this money. And I've seen on these YouTube videos, or the tutorials for how to make these YouTube videos, because I have a YouTube channel. It has 1,000 subscribers, not 1 million. It's just like a hobby. But someone said that you don't need the best camera in the world. Audiences will be compassionate if your picture is a little blurry or your background's not perfect. But when it comes to sound, there's not a lot of room. And if you're interested in doing anything on YouTube, live stream or otherwise, you need to invest in good audio quality because there's just not a lot of leeway. The standard's really high, and it really matters. And I think it matters even more for something such as Hustler Casino Live or Live at the Bike, because you're kind of watching it passively, right? No, it's not like a quick wham bam 10-minute video where you're hanging on for the brilliant insights or concepts. You're looking to watch something for a very long extended period of time, which means you want almost like background music. You want background noise.
Yeah, I guess I better do a real good job with the sound on the live stream on this episode since we're talking about it. Do you watch a lot of live stream? When you're not researching things for this episode, is that a thing that you do?
I prefer watching Twitch to watching the Live at the Bike Hustler Casinos live stream. My dad watches it pretty much every night. So whenever I'm visiting my parents, it used to be Live at the Bike is always on. Now it's Hustler Casino Live is always on. I'll watch it occasionally. I think it's great having multiple live streams, not just as a consumer for the quality, but all of the hand breakdown videos you watch on YouTube, because it's creating more content. So if someone like Bart Hansen of Crush Life Poker, or Jonathan Little of PokerCoaching.com, or the Poker Guys, whoever wants to do a hand breakdown and a hand analysis, and I love watching those. My husband and I, we always have Crush Life Poker videos on. And just because there's more hands being played that are filmed, more content's getting out there, and it feeds the ecosystem. It's got a ripple effect. So I see a lot of hands from these streams through the analysis videos.
I will hit you up for some of that YouTube information if I've thought for years about doing a YouTube channel with hand analysis stuff, but as long as training sites are paying me to do it, I guess I probably won't. Probably won't go do it for free yet, but it's a thing I should learn about.
YouTube is one of the, if not the number one growing small businesses in the United States.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then another Bob Patchich article.
But just one last thing on YouTube, really quick, in poker.
Uh-huh.
So when you have a YouTube channel, you get paid different rates based on your audience demographic. And something that's really interesting about poker is that men, particularly men who are older, because they have more disposable income, you get paid more for that click. So if you have tons of subscribers, you got 1 million subscribers, but you have a makeup YouTube channel and all your whole audience is 16-year-old girls, you're not going to make that much. But I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of these poker vloggers have found it so lucrative. I remember right before COVID, Brad Owen put out a video, and he said part of his income's from YouTube, part of it's from poker, and he said he makes more from YouTube than he does from poker. And he said a goal for himself that year was to have more from poker than YouTube. But the reason why, Brad Owen, he's got more subscribers than a YouTube vlogger, but he's not anywhere close to 1 million. I don't even think he's around 500,000 subscribers. Doug Polk only has 300,000, which in the YouTube ecosphere is not very big at all. But it's a high-paying demographic, because I think the average viewer of these poker videos is a man 40 and up. And the kind of ads you can run on that demographic are high-ticket items, like car ads, like vacation ads. It's a much higher cost per click. So I think that's the reason why poker vloggers are finding a lot of success, is not only is it addicting and people just can't get enough poker hands, but because these vloggers, they're getting rewarded for it with the, high-ticket demographic.
That is interesting. I didn't know that. I think it's been so long since I looked into those kinds of things. It probably wasn't true back then. But now, now they can track the demographics and know who the people are. And so I'm going to do a YouTube channel that is Poker for Old Men, and I'll just rake in the money.
There's an old man coffee channel.
Nice. So,
Poker for boomers.
Right.
Boomer poker, right? Boomers, poker, and bad beats, something like that.
The article that spawned this discussion was another Bob Pagic article with where he talked about Eric Person taking a big beating. He lost 600K over the night, and embedded some video in that of those beats happening. That's a good article.
It is a good article. We'll link it below. Yeah, and it's. Mhm.
Go ahead.
What's great about that article is you can watch these hands with Eric Person, and there's these like bad beat hands, but because they're live streamed, there's so many tells. Particularly, there's this one with JRB and Eric Person, and I mean it's easy when you see the cards, but JRB, it's kind of like just all the oldest tricks in the book. It's like he flops trip sixes, and then he's all of a sudden really, really disinterested, quote unquote, like turning to the guy next to him, trying to act like he doesn't care about the hand. It's the whole strong means weak and weak means strong, right? And it's like, it's just so obvious that he's just trying to act so much like, oh, I'm just chatting, as he flops the trip sixes. And then, and he bets the flop, he donk bets, Eric raises him with aces. Turn goes check, check. Thought it was a good pot control line by Eric. I think he's a very astute people reader in general when I've seen him play and when I've heard him interviewed. And he's won pots because of his table talk. So Eric knows what he's doing when it comes to live reads. So it was a good check on the turn. And then JRB all of a sudden bombs river. And it was just like, oh, so obvious. And you just watch the stream. And it's hard to fold aces and all these things. But it's worth watching these streams for the reads.
Yeah, that's probably a reason maybe I should start watching them. Next story is the Jorstad swap.
Right.
What did you learn about this thing?
Yeah, so winner of the main event, Espen Jorstad. I'm probably not saying his name correctly. He said that someone else said that he had a piece of his main event action, and Espen said, I have no record of this, I don't think this is true, so I'm going to defend myself before anyone else can say that I'm not paying out this swap. And I think what was interesting is how in any other, and first of all, people were kind of laughing at it, but in any other industry, it would just be completely laughed out the door when you say a non-verbal, like a contract not in writing. I think poker's the only one where you're swapping huge amounts of money through a text message, and that's your record. The poker swaps don't even have contracts, which I don't know how any of that is binding, let alone a supposed verbal agreement. So, I think the fact that he feels like he needs to defend himself, and that I saw some other pros commenting that I've made verbal swaps before and I absolutely believe verbal is binding, I think it's a step backwards, and I think it goes back to poker, being a mafioso kind of boys club game played behind closed doors, where it's, a series of handshakes. Yeah. So I actually thought the defense was worse than the non-crime, the supposed crime.
The first thing that I thought about here is the idea that something is legally binding isn't really a thing. It's how well you can convince a judge with what you have. If what you have is signed by both parties, with witnesses, with a notary, then a judge is going to be able to talk to those witnesses and that notary and go, yes, I really strongly believe this piece of evidence is accurate. If it's a napkin with both your names written on it, a judge will go, I don't know, this doesn't look so great. But if you have enough of those napkins and enough of those other bits of evidence, you still get there. There's not a legally binding contract in some sort of official way, right? And I think a text message conversation where people agreed to a thing would be very persuasive to a judge. I think if it came down to that and there was a lawsuit, most judges are going to look at this and say these people clearly agreed to this thing. Not as maybe persuasive as a signed contract, but pretty good. If you just do it verbally, that's just your word against theirs. And there's no way that money's going to be awarded based on, hey, he said he was going to give me some money.
Yeah, and Espen said he had no recollection of the conversation, but I guess, again, that's his word against the other guys.
And the messages that they shared back and forth about this certainly look like Espen's, makes Espen look really good. He says, do you remember when this was? Theologist says, I don't remember when it was, but I remember we swapped 3%. There's a bunch of, back and forth where it appears that there was no record of this thing, and that Jorstad also kept records of all the swaps that he had, and published them. So he actually swapped out 56%, which I thought was another interesting part of the story. That's a lot of swap, right? He won enough money to still be doing very well after all those swaps, but 56% of basically double-digit $1 million is swapping out a lot. I've never swapped out nearly that much in the main because I'm very picky, and I follow my own advice as well as possible. Don't swap with people who won't hunt you down to pay you, right? Just, you should know these people, and then always have at least a text message confirming it. I've swapped with people I would trust with my life. We still send a text message back and forth because we'll remember it. It's not even just about the legally binding portion of it. It's remembering. I confirmed with another Minnesota player like a few years ago, do we have a swap in the main? And he said no. And I said, okay, cool. I confirmed it because I didn't have a text message, and I thought I remembered it, but I didn't for sure remember it. And it turned out it was someone different that I had swapped with, and so I found that and found it in the text messages. It's really important to have that record, at least for yourself, and then to not swap with people who aren't going to hunt you down to pay you, because otherwise you're free rolling yourself.
Yeah, and this year I sold Ash for the main event, but I did it all through Stake Kings, which I have an upcoming story about. So they handled all of it. So there was, I took it out of my hands. But it kind of does kill the romance and glamour of winning the main event, that the winner just goes, I only had 56% of 6% of myself, or he sold 56. I only had about half myself, right? Moneymaker didn't do that. In the old days, it was like it kind of makes poker very sterile, right? Very systematized, very, it takes away a lot of the fun when all of you, especially because everyone wants like the satellite winner, or the one person on their bucket list, who's taken a shot and who's going to have the big win. And then for it to become so regimented and logical and just kind of sliced and diced like this, I don't know, I think it spoils the game a little bit.
Yeah. I wrote an article a little while back about how so many of these ultra high stakes cash games on TV are people have just swapped big chunks of action to the point where they're really not playing very big at all. It just looks great for TV to have these millions of dollars in front of everybody, and when in fact everyone has it'd be easy for you and I to say we were going to play $100 million heads up match and just swap 50%, and now we just don't owe each other any money, but we get all the publicity from playing a $100 million heads up match.
Totally.
In fact, that's not a bad idea. Next week, let's play $100 million.
Let's play $100 million.
Yeah.
All right, and I think that brings us to our final story.
Bigger,
yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
We'll just keep setting a new record every week, and if anybody plays bigger than us, then we'll just set a new one.
Oh, I love it. Let's do it.
But you're right in that takes some of the glitz out of the whole thing, because what I pointed out to people was these people that you think are these crazy gamblers that are piling these huge amounts of money in all the time really aren't, and that's part of the draw of poker for some people. They really like that. So yeah, it is sort of a downer to find out that everybody's swapping like this. But on the other hand, the risk tolerance is that you have to not do those things is crazy. Right? Like, I like to be all in on myself and not do a lot of swaps. My last deep run in the main, I had one swap for 1%, and that was it. But I also, have sold action a bunch of times. I have swapped a bunch of times. I've never swapped as much as 56%, but I've done a bunch of swaps in the past, and I get it. The variance in the main event is many lifetimes to get into the long run and even come out a winner if you're a great player. It takes a long time. So swapping helps cut that down, and poker is built to be a wildly high variance thing, and people are just trying to figure out how to survive until they get their next hit. It looks to me like Jorstad, like there was probably not a swap, and Jorstad would have been honest about it if there was one. So if there was a swap, it's an innocent mistake that Jorstad forgot it, but it looks to me like I don't think there was one.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean the other guy's lying. The other guy may be misremembering as well. I don't know.
Yeah, it's totally possible, that he misremembered. But I think what's the bigger story is just the prevalence of swaps now.
I sold action in 2014 to a well-known online player and friend of mine, Johnny G Stacks. And Johnny, after it was in 2017, and I had a deep run in the main that year, and I contacted Johnny and told him, hey, I owe you some money, and he said, no, I was just buying. I'm wrong, it was 2014, but it doesn't matter. He said, I was just buying action in the main. I just bought action in the main from you. And I said, no, you bought action in everything. I have you on my spreadsheet as I owe you money for the horse win, which was a fairly significant amount of money that I was going to owe him. I think I was going to owe him like $10,000 or $20,000. And he said, no, I was just buying action in the main. I'm sure of it. So then we had this argument back and forth where I was trying to give him money and he was refusing to take it. And this is the kind of person that you should be swapping action with.
Totally.
Right? This is the kind of person you should be dealing with. And in the end, I think that he was probably right. I think the preponderance of the evidence was on his side, but I still wanted to give him something, and I told him, fine, I'll buy you a bottle of liquor and we'll call it square. And he said, okay. And that was a little bit of a trick because I bought him a $400 bottle of tequila. But these are the kind of people that you should look for, people that are going to be more honest than the vast majority of poker players. Don't swap with someone just because you think they're good or because you've known them for 6 months. People run off with money a lot. It happens a lot.
Well, yeah, the problem too is sometimes you are dealing with people that are genuinely well-intentioned, heart in the right place, doing their best, and they go broke. When you're interacting, in the poker world, they, and I feel like that probably happens more than, you loan money to someone who promises to pay it back and they just run out of money, then you're being hustled.
Yeah, and if it comes down to feed yourself, feed your family, do whatever you have to do or pay back your debts, you're probably going to feed your family. And so you have to not only wonder if this person's honest, but are they good enough? Are they financially stable enough to pay you? And
Exactly.
if there are any questions, don't swap. If you sell action, don't. If you don't have the money in your hand before the tournament starts, it's off. And make sure everyone knows that. No one's paying you later for action they want to buy after the tournament. Don't do any of these things. Make sure that everything is straight, that there's a record of all of it so you don't have these problems. Because if you don't do it, there will be some of these problems. I've seen so many of them.
Absolutely. All right, well, I think the ticket out of all of money problems is to win a bad beat jackpot, right?
If it's big enough.
It's big enough. I think there was one that was big enough.
Yeah, the one at Rivers in Pittsburgh, right? Huge. $1.2 million bad beat jackpot. The largest bad beat jackpot ever in the United States. Loser got $490,000 for losing with quad aces to a royal flush.
Fantastic.
Literally life-changing money. But I was interested reading this article on Cards Chat and doing a little research. Like, this is not the largest backbeat jackpot in North American history. In fact, it's like number 4 or 5 or 6 in North America. There was one 2.2 million at Playground Casino in Canada this summer. $2.2 million. Incredible.
I don't know. I feel I'm of two minds about publicizing these stories because, on the one hand, it's relevant, it's good to know, and it's fun for the poker community. On the other hand, most of us will be net losers to these bad beat jackpots. Like, I play a whole lot of poker, and very consistently, and a whole lot of hours. I've never even gotten a table share.
Yeah. I've played for a living for 20 years, and I got one table share of an Omaha 8 jackpot, and my table share, I think, was $600.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
$600.
So,
And
yeah.
for sure, I've contributed tens of thousands to these things.
Oh, I've only been playing poker for 5-6 years, and I know I've contributed tens of thousands of dollars to these bad beat jackpots.
I don't know what the law is in Nevada, but in many states, the house can take a chunk of that bad beat money as an admin fee.
I believe
And
that's what's going on at Hollywood Park Casino in Los Angeles because their bad beat jackpot is very, very, very small and never seems to go up after a certain range.
If you let the house find a way to take money, that's their job, right? They're a casino. I've seen houses where there was a breakfast special, late nights, for $2. You got ham, eggs, and hash browns.
Mm-hmm.
I used to buy it all the time, and then I found out that every time you bought one of those, you gave them $2, and then they took $8 out of the player promo pool, which is where the bad beat jackpot comes from, because they called it a player promo to bring people in late at night, and they would get $10 for it. And this was not a $10 breakfast. This kind of behavior is not uncommon with these player promo pools. It's one of the reasons players dislike them so much. Now, I think if it brings in players and it's not being terribly abused, these things can be great. I've played in rooms with where the bad beat jackpot is very large and the games are fantastic and it's well worth it. Mm-hmm. But they are definitely abused. In Minnesota, I believe that they could take 25% of that money when it came in as an admin fee. Yeah. And if they can take 25%, that's how much they take. And so I think that all the rooms in Minnesota do take that much. And I don't know what the rule is in Nevada, but anywhere that you can do that, they will. And if it's 2.2 million like it was in Playground, or 1.2 million like it was in Rivers, the house is being paid an awful lot of money. 260,000 would be what they would be taking out of this one in Rivers. So every dollar that you put that goes into that promo slot, 75 cents of it comes back to all the players, and 25 cents of it is gone. And
wow.
That's frustrating.
It is. But
it was really great for some
when
players.
I win my bad beat jackpot or I lose the hand to win the bad beat jackpot, then I'll say it's all fair.
Yeah. The table share was $61,000. I mean, yeah. just for being at the table when it happened, you got enough to have a really fantastic party weekend in Vegas.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to them, the winners of this bad beat jackpot.
Yeah.
And I think that's our first show.
That's pretty much a wrap. We're gonna do this thing every week and see what people think. We want to hear your feedback. You can let us know at Amanda Botfeld, AmandaBotfeld on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Amanda would love to hear what you have to say about how you would like the show to go in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. Reach out to me. We also have a Cards Chat Twitter account. Chris has got Twitter. We'll link everything. And thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
The River is presented by CardsChat.com, the world's #1 poker community. Join our forum for daily free rolls that pay real money.